Welcome to Her Hoop Stats Podcast, your all-in-one place for every level of any information you want to get for women's basketball. I'm Helen Williams, and usually we talk about college basketball, WNBA on our podcast, but today, special treat. I'm so excited. We have Emma Baccellieri, who is the one of the authors of Court Queen's book, and Emma, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to talk to you. I will have to start, though, by congratulating you on Duke's ACC championship on Sunday, because Emma is a Duke grad. More than likely, your men's team will at least be in the finals. So let me extend that congratulations to you.
Thank you. Not too much on the bold prediction for the men yet. I'm a little scared with Caleb Foster's foot injury, but
Sure.
yeah, great year for both teams. Very exciting.
Yeah. So just thought I'd get that in there. But let me just read a little bit about your profile so people know. Emma has been a staff writer at Sports Illustrated since 2018. She profiled star female basketball players and teams in the pages of Sports Illustrated and has anchored the publication's coverage of major events such as the Final Four and WNBA Finals. And again, she's a graduate of Duke University. So, yeah, there's some subject matter expertise there.
Yeah, no, it's I've felt pretty lucky to be able to cover the game for a magazine where there hasn't always been a ton of space for women's sports, and then really excited to get to use that in a different format with the book here.
Right. So let me just ask you, what was the genesis of you and I will say your partner, Jordan Robinson, compiling that book? What made you feel like this was necessary to put together?
Yeah, this is the sort of thing, Jordan and I have kind of joked over the process of writing it and now talking about it and putting it out in the world, that it feels kind of like this is a project that we'd been preparing for all our lives and we didn't know it. That just being interested in the history of the game, in the different characters who have made the game what it is, and how to present that visually. Like, those are things that we've been interested in as women's basketball fans and now reporters for a really, really, really long time. And we were lucky that this was something actually that a publisher was interested in and reached out to us about, rather than something that we had kind of come up with entirely on our own and then set about pitching. But yeah, we were very lucky. We had a fantastic editor, Lisa, who really wanted to see a book like this out in the world and thought of the two of us. And from there, it was just a really fun process of deciding, how do you tell this history? How do you put this together in a way that's visually appealing and covers as much ground as possible without being too dense, and getting to sort through all of that amazing history and go through those great photos and put it together in a book.
So talk a little bit about Jordan and why she was a good partner for you for this.
Oh yeah, Jordan is amazing. I wish she could be here today. She is stuck at the airport currently after flying back from covering some conference tournaments. But yeah, she's someone who I had admired from afar from a really long time, and we kind of been online friends. We followed each other on social media, but hadn't really, meaningfully connected before we started working on this book together. And she just is someone who has such a joyful spirit when it comes to the game, that she's, she has experience from playing in college and now has covered the game in a variety of formats over the last couple of years, from broadcast to podcast, which is where I think most people probably are familiar with her from, to the written word. She's done all of that, but really that joy that she has for basketball, for women's hoops in particular, it just was so much fun to see on a project like this. That's someone who, you know, has certainly a lot of technical expertise and a really strong background in the game, but really just loves the sport so much and is so excited to share so much about the sport. It made her such an amazing, amazing co-author for a project like this, and personally made it really fun to work on, to have someone who was always that excited to sit down and dive into it each day. And then apart from that, also she is much more visual than I am, which was a huge gift because,
Yeah,
as a coffee
sure.
table book, you have a lot of layout decisions and photography choices, and we did have a great designer who helped us with that. But she by far is just so much better in those departments than I am. And so that made it really, really helpful to have someone who had that kind of eye for design and photos and all of that.
So, was there a specific demographic you guys were after as you were thinking about compiling this book?
That's a good question because we did think about that and ended up settling on just anyone who's interested in women's basketball, casting as broad a net as we possibly could. So we
Okay.
like the idea of this being something that, it's certainly at an adult reading level, but is accessible for teens, for younger girls, that this is something they can page through, see these photos, go through some of this text. We wanted something that still felt very much accessible for younger fans. We wanted something that would hopefully have something to teach everyone so that if you're a newer fan, there are so many of those out there, and those newer fans are a group that our publisher and our editor was really excited about reaching. We wanted to give something that still felt accessible for them and wasn't too overwhelming, but something also that existing fans and people who have watched the game for decades and decades and decades will still find something hopefully that's new and engaging and teaches them something they didn't know. And we wanted this to be something for, men and women, all age brackets, all geographic regions, just that anyone who loves the game hopefully can find something in here that they like.
Yeah, I love the fact that, people can go down memory lane with it, or some of the younger kids now who are hoopers, in college had no idea of the people who came before them and helped to get the game to where it is. So I can appreciate that about the book. You, you're putting it out on the 30th anniversary of the WNBA. Was that intentional, or did you just decide, hey, we're just going to do it? Did you think about that at all? Did you realize that at all?
It was a little bit of a happy accident that it wasn't something that we'd planned from the start, but as we got closer to the point where we put it all together and we're looking at potential publication dates and time periods, that really stood out to us. And I think really just looking at the growth the W has had over the last couple of years, the growth that's hopefully going to continue picking up, it just feels like such a great time to show this history and to reach out to fan bases who maybe don't have all of that historical context, who don't realize what it took for the league to get to where it is, what it took for women's basketball before the WNBA was even an idea to get to where it is. Having something that kind of ties all that history together and really just provides context for what's happening right now seemed really important. And, the anniversary, I think, certainly is a nice little hook and doesn't hurt.
For sure, for sure. Let's go back to, you were talking about growing the game and the people that started it. Talk a little bit about how figures like Sanda Berenson or Ora Washington helped shape the sport way back in the day.
Yeah, those early chapters of the book are some of my absolute favorites and were just so much fun to work on because, I Jordan and I, when we sat down to work on this, we had both heard those names, that we both knew Senda Berenson was a physical education teacher from the 1890s who kind of introduced the game to women, and that Ora Washington was one of the first Black superstars that you had in the game in the 1920s and 30s. But we didn't really know much beyond that. We didn't know how much material there was going to be to pull from, especially in terms of photographs. We wanted to make sure we had some great photos for every single essay. We didn't know how much material we would have to pull from in terms of the visuals. And it was just such a treat to realize how much there was and how much we could really fill up those early sections with. So Sunda Berenson was a teacher at Smith College in the 1890s. She was someone who had not been very athletic as a kid. She'd actually battled some pretty serious illnesses and was thought of as pretty frail. But she finds physical education teaching. She gets stronger. She gets healthier. She decides so important for women at that time to have access to sports and to have access to physical activity and be encouraged to be strong and not just shut up in the house all the time the way that she was as a kid. And she also, because this is Massachusetts, not far from Springfield in the early 1890s, she is not far from James Naismith, who obviously, as everyone knows, is credited with inventing basketball in the early 1890s. And she sees what he's doing and immediately thinks, women should do this too. I should do this with my girls at Smith College. And so she not only really is credited with starting the game of getting it off the ground and introducing it to women, but she also then, I was interested to see, does so much in terms of setting up the rules and actually in terms of setting up the early 6-on-6 provisions. A lot of that comes from Senda, even though it kind of evolves over time and has other contributing factors. She really just is a pivotal figure in the first 20 years of the game, which was cool to see how big a role she played in spreading the game, writing about the game. Spalding sporting goods had her write pamphlets about the rules of the game and distribute them, just showing that, girls across the country should be playing this and publicizing the rules and really getting it out there. Just a really interesting figure who started the game, and you have some really, really cool photographs that I really enjoyed of her and her girls playing in these crazy full-length skirts and serious shoes and just really great black and white images that I loved. Um, and yeah, so from there, kind of the next big figure we have after some literal vignettes in between is Ora Washington, as you said, who is one of the first Black stars of the game, who is playing in Philadelphia and New York, and just really had been a great tennis player, then becomes a great basketball player. They call her the Queen of Two Courts. And it was really important for us to have her in the book, to have her in there early, and to have her kind of getting the same treatment at length that we give to Senda, who a lot of times you see credited, and then it's like a timeline will skip like 40 years just because it seems like there's not as much documented history of what girls and women were doing on the court in between. It was really important for us to have Aura in there just because so often you don't see that early Black history of the game as much. You don't see Black girls and women given the space that you have pre 1950 to white women. And so we really wanted to have Aura in there, and it was amazing. Jordan handled this chapter, and there's just incredible newspaper archives from Black newspapers who covered her games pretty thoroughly. You have some incredible photographs too, just looking into all of that history and being able to really show that, yes, this starts in 1890 with Senda Berenson and other white women at Smith College, which was all white at the time, and so were surrounding schools. But you also had Black women playing the game very, very, very soon after, basically as soon as it starts getting spread across the country. And they're such a pivotal piece of this history too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Folks don't know that it started off the 6-on-6 where you could not go past half court. And that lasted for a fairly long time. I think Iowa was the last state to uh, to do that before everybody went to 5-on-5. So it's an interesting contrast to go from that to seeing somebody like Dominique Belonga dunking the basketball, in
Yeah,
unrivaled in terms of that timeline.
100%. And it was crazy also to realize the process of transitioning from 6-on-6 to 5-on-5. There were some things we read in the research here, like Pat Summitt testified before the state of Tennessee was trying to decide, should we legislate all high school girls basketball with 6-on-6 at the time. And Pat Summitt was saying, I will not be able to recruit players from the state of Tennessee to come play at Tennessee if you don't switch to 5-on-5 for high school, that other states are making this switch and you're going to get left behind. And you have versions of that playing out across the country. And then, like you said, you have Iowa, which sticks around until the 90s, which is pretty remarkable that it had such a strong foothold there.
Yeah, and it's just interesting to see the whole progression. Were there any other lesser known names that caught your eye? I mean, we all know about like Annie. Well, I shouldn't say all of us, but people in the know about Annie Myers. They know about Cheryl Miller. Was there anybody else that was lesser known that caught your eye?
I think one of my favorites are all of the women of the WBL, which is that first real professional league you have in the late 70s and early 80s, where it doesn't last very long, but it really kind of sets the groundwork for what professional basketball can look like for women. You have these incredible team names, you have great uniforms, you have a league that is kind of a mess organization wise and financially, but women who are really, really committed to playing. So, all of the stars in there, you had Molly Bolin Casmer, who's a huge part of that chapter. Elizabeth Galloway McQuitter. Pearl Moore is a name that people heard a lot when Caitlin Clark was breaking the scoring record, because Pearl Moore had the all NCAA record outside of Division One for scoring. She played in the WBL. But really, all of those players, everyone in that league, everyone that we talked to, everyone whose voices are in that chapter, just had such amazing experiences and such really cool stories to tell about what that league was like, just what it meant to them to play professionally in the US at that time, and in a stretch where that it seemed like it might be impossible. Uh, just all of those women who were so, giving with their time and their photos and their archives. it was just really, really interesting to get to hear what their experience had been like and to be able to show a little of what they've done, just because, not all of those women are still with us, but a lot of them are, and being able to make sure that they get a chance to have that history highlighted a little bit more was really important to us.
I would imagine, obviously, that being a precursor to the WNBA, Project B, Unrivaled, Athletes Unlimited. Did any of them? Did you have a discussion with any of them about the game now and where it is, and what were their thoughts?
Mostly there just is a mix of, really amazed to see how far it's come, to see, the contracts players have, the opportunities players have, just the fact that players have choices of how they're going to structure their professional careers, starting in college, starting with NIL and starting with the opportunities there. That's the kind of thing that a lot of them are just kind of in awe of. I think there's also for some, it is a little sad to see like, gosh, why couldn't the world have caught up a little bit sooner? But all of those women were it seemed like really, really great stewards of the game who are really excited to see where it's come today. And, just being able to watch even the act of turning on national television and seeing games every night is something that they very much were not able to take for granted. And having that be the reality now, I think is just really cool for a lot of them to see where the sport has come.
Well, let's fast forward to today's professional league, and we are taping this on March the 11th, and March 10th was the deadline for the CBA for the WNBA. What are your thoughts on that in terms of your opinion on what needs to get done, if it will get done, and what has been going on so far in terms of how people have been approaching it, what they've been saying, what do you think is true, what's not true. Just give me your overall opinion on that.
Yeah, I think what we saw last night is a really good sign for getting a deal done. That is having 12 hours in a room is exhausting, certainly for all parties. But being able to have that kind of back and forth, where you have the leadership from both parties talking to each other, working things out at the table, supposedly coming back to the table today and potentially the days to come. I think that's a really good sign that there is legitimate movement here. It doesn't all fall into place immediately, but I think in a lot of these labor negotiations, certainly across other areas of professional sports, but even if you look at labor outside of sports, you see so much get done in those final days, that final week. It really usually comes down to something like this, where you have just both parties getting in a room, hashing it out, and going through everything in real time at the table rather than doing individual formal proposals that then get passed back and reviewed slowly one at a time. So I think we're probably in a place I would like to believe where there is a deal here that, that March 10th deadline did come with some wiggle room. It's very much possible to still have a full season, albeit a really, really hectic off season with all of free agency and the draft and the expansion draft and all of that. That's still possible if a deal is done in the next few days, the next week. I think we're in a window where a deal can be done, but there's not a lot of time. And so, if we don't see more of those extended negotiating sessions, ideally in person, I think then you're at a place where maybe it's not looking so good. Maybe there is legitimate reason to believe that we don't see the full season. But I think as of right now, there is still time for it in my eyes to get done in a way where nothing is lost.
Yeah, everything is going to have to be truncated in terms of time, and there is, once you're dealing with the reality of actually losing money, it's amazing how motivated both sides can be. So,
Yep.
going to be interesting to see for sure, for sure. Let's switch a little bit to college basketball. I want to talk about one of the interesting points that you made was that in 1983, the championship game between Southern Cal, USC, and Louisiana Tech, the NCAA final, was viewed by 11.34 people. Juxtapose that with what you think about the growth of the game today.
It is really astounding looking at the cultural power the game had in the 80s, specifically those USC teams, Cheryl Miller and her teammates. I mean, it's just amazing to realize there was this brief window where they really occupied this kind of cultural real estate where it seemed like the game was just gonna go up and up and up, and then you kind of have this period through the '90s, the 2000s, the 2010s even, where they're just not able to kind of build on that momentum. The same way you have all of these bigger structural questions about how the NCAA treats the sport. Those 1980s tournaments were very new. That was coming out of a time when you had the AIAW originally overseeing women's college sports, and the NCAA is coming in and trying to establish itself as the option there. And so once you don't have that competition, once women's sports are firmly under the control of the NCAA, you really see all of these kind of big questions about how is the tournament being structured? Where is it being aired? How is it being promoted? All of these bigger questions that kind of a lot of times can feel circular of, is this a question of where are the fans? Is it a question of can the fans find it? Is it a question of how do you grow it? And it just kind of gets trapped for a while that you have all of these amazing players, these amazing teams over that, 20, 30-year period, but it didn't feel like the college game was quite growing in the same way that I think people might have guessed if you had looked at it in the mid '80s and seen the reception that those USC teams got. Louisiana Tech, Kim Mulkey, some of the amazing
Pigtails.
players. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. It is so funny to see those pictures from back then. But yeah, I mean, I think looking then, I'm sure there are people who had probably hoped it can just go up and up and up. This is just the beginning. And instead, it took a lot longer. But I think what's so exciting is that you have seen that really considerable explosive growth over the last couple of years, both for the college game and the professional game. You have seen that trajectory kind of solidify itself. You certainly, I think, there are always going to be frustrations with the NCAA, with the structural powers that be, but a lot of the bigger ones really have changed in the last couple of years. With, I mean, we're only a couple of years into the women being able to use the term March Madness. The structural things there really after that report that came out of the bubble tournament in 2021, where they really sat down and changed some things about the structure of the women's tournament as it relates to the men's tournament. The fact that so many of the games are now on ABC, not, ESPN2, that makes a difference. All of that adds up. There are certainly, again, very valid complaints, but some of the a lot of the low-hanging fruit has disappeared now. You have the game in a better spot to keep growing, to have those structural things more taken care of, and, yeah, it's just really exciting to see.
Yeah, you can find games on CBS, on ACC network, ESPN, Fox, Big Ten network. So that is exciting. What about the impact of the new generation of stars? You've got obviously Caitlin Clark from a couple years ago, and Juju Watkins, Sarah Strong, AZ Fudd. How much do how much is their like their social media presence? That's obviously something that's helping the game grow. What impact do you think they will have on the sustainability of the growth of the game?
I think it's impossible to overstate it. I think it is so, so huge. I think, like you said, social media, the fact that they are building these fan bases and they have their own fans who they can talk to directly, who they can harness, who they can use as leverage for brand deals to expand their footprint, all of that. That's huge. The fact that it's so many players that I think, Caitlin Clark is really kind of her own phenomenon, but you have so many huge fan bases here that are able to kind of command sponsorships and viewership that just was not possible even a few years ago. That Angel Reese and Paige Beckers, Cam Brink, that entire class in the W, the players coming up, like you said, Izzy Fudd, Sarah Strong, Hannah Hidalgo, Olivia Miles. You just have so many different players who I think appeal to different fans and have their own distinct fan base. You have the international game growing. You had brought up Dom Malonga earlier. You have just so many opportunities for those younger players to come into the league with a fan base that's already big and kind of bridge that gap that existed for such a long time from college ball to the W. You have something like Unrivaled or Athletes Unlimited, which keeps them in the public eye in the winter at a time when they would traditionally kind of disappear as they went overseas. You have just such a bigger platform in every sense of the word that, I mean, like, I really don't think it's possible to overstate how much that changes for the hopes of a like, truly sustainable long-term effort to build these fan bases and to just keep the game and keep the players in the public eye, in mainstream conversation, all of that.
You cannot put the genie back in the bottle.
Yep.
For sure. Well, if you had to give one reason why people need to get this book, what would it be?
I think I'm gonna go with this history is just so fun. That I think a lot of times we see the history of women's basketball kind of packaged as, like this is a history of struggle, and certainly in some parts it is. It's a history of women fighting to be on the court, of women being told that they can't be on the court or getting there and told that they'll never be profitable, it's never going to be good enough, being told they need to lower the rims or wear shorter shorts, all of that. Like that is true, but also just this is a really fun, joyful, interesting history that you have some like true hoopers all the way back to the 1890s. You have all of these different variations of the game, women who played 6-on-6, 5-on-5, like rural high school ball, international ball, you have various pro leagues, you have what we see today, college, all of that, so many different variations, and it's all just so fun that seeing kind of how the game has developed, how so many of these women had incredible stories, incredible accomplishments, some of which have never really gotten anywhere near the shine that they've deserved. And I think that's something that we really wanted to focus on here to make this feel fun and to show as much of that history as we could, even the parts where it is more of a history of struggle, but to have the overall effect to be like, these are really cool players and really great women, and it's awesome to have them all in one book.
Awesome. So the book is called Court Queens. Where can people purchase it? I know our producer BMAC has already ordered his advanced copy, but where can people purchase the book?
Anywhere you buy books, so if that's your local bookstore, if it's Barnes& and Noble, if it's Amazon, if it's Target, it is available all of those places. It comes out March 17th, but you can pre-order anytime.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited, Emma. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I cannot wait to get a copy of the book myself. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.